Yeah, so they say if you build it, they will come. So what I've attempted to do, but it's hard to build something when you have no subscribers. So we'll see. Hola, ¿cómo está? Gretchen, I've missed you. Babushka. Look, man, I can. Oh! We got somebody. We got Prudent. Now there is not just one. There is two. Prudent, you are probably muted.
Yeah, it was.
Yay!
So things with you?
Things are going good. I just realized that I'm coming through my laptop instead of my headphones. Let me plug my headphones in. That might be helpful.
All right.
Usually, it's been like ages. There you go. Is that better?
Can you say that again?
Is that better?
Yeah, that's a lot better.
Okay, cool.
So nobody else is in yet. That's fine. I mean, I can actually handle a hangout with just two people. That's fine. Yeah, you can.
We're live, Prudent. We're live.
Yeah, I know. I have already seen that.
I have 9 whole subscribers right now. That's awesome.
Well, don't you have? Well, you don't use the other channel?
I use the other channel too, but I was trying to use this for like open hangouts and stuff.
Yeah, I've only got 72 on this channel, so you know it's. To be fair, I spend more of my time on Twitter anyway. Got 190 followers there. It's a lot better.
2 of my favorite people are in live chat though. We got Gretchen and Renee. If we're lucky, they'll come in. I think I added you to live chat, Gretchen. Not live chat. What's the word? Green chat? I don't know.
So this is just open topic?
Open topic.
I'll wait for something to come up a little bit later. So how long is this just going to be? Is this going to be a weekly thing, or?
I don't know about weekly, but my schedule's changed where I'm off a little bit early. So like, I can actually do something after work, which is kind of amazing. So, I got a question for you. We'll do a starter since it's just you and me. If you are watching and you would like in on the conversation, just let me know and we can maybe get you in. I added a bunch of people to green chat, and I thought maybe we'd score and get Gus, but instead of scoring and get Gus just like left promptly. So I figure like, okay, well, you know, you can try. But in our community, we have a lot of different ideas and stuff. And one of the things I noticed is we were disagreeing. It was actually me and I wanted to call him Bibu Bop, but that's not his name. Why did I want to call him Bibu Bop? I don't know. The very nice gentleman, but he's sometimes hard to understand. He's a Quaker.
I have no idea who you're talking about.
It starts with a P. I can't think of his name right now. Oh, Beetle Phony Maniac. There we go.
Oh yeah, Beetle Phony Maniac. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a real nice dude, but we were disagreeing because I mentioned that psychology is a soft science, and I hate saying that because I like psychology so much. But
in it.
But it's I call it a soft science because it's in that category with anthropology and sociology.
It is.
Just call him Gary. Yeah, it's a little bit easier.
I couldn't remember Gary, I know. I don't even know why I didn't suggest that.
I think Bibu Bop or something is that weird, scary video that Renee made me watch.
Yeah, let's just call him Gary for simplicity.
Yeah. So Gary's upset because he says it's medical, and I agree that it's medical, obviously.
Psychiatry is medical. Psychology, not so much. Psychiatry might be like a branch of like psychology, but I don't know if I would feel comfortable just saying that psychology, like as a whole, is medical. Only certain branches of it.
Right. So which branch is it? Because I know that the medical field tends to really embrace cognitive, and then kind of throws to the wind the analytical.
Really, some. I mean, Hell, I mean, even some elements of behavioral science could be applied to the medical sense, but I mean, I think I mean, there's obviously a lot of cross-referencing like between psychiatry and psychology, but you know, just to like outright claim that like psychology is medical, I think that's exaggerating it to say the least.
Well, it's so tough because, like I said, I am a fan of psychology, but it's so like the therapy and stuff like that doesn't work across the board for everybody. They're always throwing darts, kind of figuring out what works for you and what makes you better. And so it's so tough because you are linked with the pharmaceutical end of things and working with chemicals in your brain, and obviously psychiatry, and then you got psychology, and on top of it, the subject originally was Peterson, which I think Peterson's very interesting, not for the stupid interview with the lobster lady, but just because he's a fairly intelligent conservative guy.
Is he
And
conservative? I mean, he
I
sounds.
think
I think he's more of like a centrist, if anything. I mean,
probably, yeah. Well, it's nice to see somebody for psychology on the conservative end, which we don't often see. And it's nice to see a representative of somebody that might be not anti-intellectual, but a little more on the right, if that makes sense.
kind of like a William Buckley type.
Yeah, like I think I even mentioned that, like William F. Buckley, the time when conservatism didn't necessarily equate to being anti-intellectual. And
Yeah.
so
Thanks for nothing, Reagan.
so Peterson is interesting, and I don't agree with everything that he's saying, like with the wage gap and stuff. I actually veer more left than him on these things, but he is an interesting fellow. But part of the reason why I think he's so interesting is because he's a Jungian. Like he's like when you watch more and more of his stuff, he's very much into Carl Jung and into the different intelligences and things like that. And so that aspect of him I find interesting. It's the very aspect that you would declare a soft science. It's like the less declared, almost considered woo-woo side of psychology, but it's interesting. And
I mean, I don't know if I would even call it scientific. If it really gets into the woo side, it's not really scientific because it's not falsifiable. I mean, science kind of does operate under Popperian philosophy. Did I say that right after Karl Popper?
mhm.
Is Popperian like the right term to use? I'm just going to assume it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's tough, right? So like I hate saying soft science in one way because I know that people will be like roar, and on the other hand, like if I declare a hard science, I know that the person who posted the link and said I don't know what I think about this guy. I know that Mr. Bell is famously anti-psychology, so much so that he's gotten in brute like arguments with Mr. Mahdi and stuff. And so I think it's interesting. I don't know why I'm calling people Mr. I'm like on this thing where I'm just calling people Mr. now lately because I had an irate customer. He's like, call me Mr. So and so. And so I've been calling everybody by their last name now. But I think it's interesting that so many people are up in arms about it. So I said, yeah, some people don't like him because of soft sciences, I know, but I think he's interesting because of that. So that's kind of why I qualified it. But you're into psychology, but are you going to be more into like the field of clinical study and stuff like that?
Well, I want to get into behavioral psychology. Still trying to. I don't know. A lot of the jobs for that really are not in my state, which is actually fine. I wouldn't mind moving, but apparently, it's a hard thing to do. They're not if you're in a different state, they're probably less likely to hire you. I still have to deal with my shitty job right now, in which I have to actually go to work there in a couple hours. I have to work overnights in a grocery store. It's not very fun, but they actually pay a pretty good wage for that kind of job, at least where I work at.
It's because they're unionized.
No, it's because my county is very competitive and it kind of owns. But yeah, I have a few union protections. At least I think I do. we're like one of like the few like really like competitive. I have to find the study, but like they did like a study, and they had like some type of measurement, like where they would measure like the competitiveness of each county, and like the county that I live in is like one of like the top counties. I'd have to find it first. You still there?
I'm here. I muted because my phone started buzzing, but I'm listening. I used to work in a grocery store. I was a stalker, amongst other things, GM clerk. I hated it. It's mundane, but Christian anarchist left my group. Fine, Christian anarchist, we didn't need you anyway.
Have you been pissing him off lately? Because I think I've noticed like you've pointed him out, like you've criticized him a few times, like in the Facebook chat.
I don't know, like. Sorry about that. I think that sometimes we collide, and it's almost always Calvinist based. But I am not interested in impressing the same people that he seems to be interested in. So I don't worry about it. I just I disagreed about a meme, and then he disagreed about how I disagreed about the meme, even though I felt like I was being more charitable. And then I was like, fine. So it's fine. It doesn't matter. My battery's running low. Let me go ahead and turn on my thing. There you go.
So I guess you brought up Peterson earlier. I'm not actually that into him. I've seen like a few of like his videos. I mean, some people I think are a little over obsessed with him. I don't go that far. From some of what he says, I like, but there's been a few times where, quite frankly, he's pissed me off. I don't really know where he stands like on religion, but like is he a Christian or is he not? Because like he said a few things that like are really weird. Like there was one interview he did, like where he claimed that he claimed that certain atheists don't or act in a Christian-like manner or act in a religious-like manner because a lot of them don't rape, murder, or steal. And I'm looking at, I'm hearing that, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, are we arguing with creationists back in 2010? Because that's kind of what it sounds like.
I think he seems like he's hard to peg. Like he wants to believe in a God, but he can't seem to nail down what he is. Is he a deist? Is he a theist? And he seems like he definitely has established that he thinks that there's a need for religion, for morality, and he's not the only one to say something like that isn't a Christian. I think it's the atheist philosopher Alan D. Bouton, I think his name is. He's like Swedish or something. He has a book that he wrote called Religion for Atheists. Do you know him?
I think so.
He does the School of Life videos on YouTube.
I don't know who that is.
And he's also in Think Big here and there. He talks about how religion tugs you and reminds you to do the right thing even when you don't feel like it. And that we do need something like that tugs us like a duty or a reminder. And he feels like that's lacking in the secular world. It seems like Peterson's saying that, and he's also saying something additionally to that, which is he doesn't see how there's any grounding or meaning without a creator. But the problem is it's almost like it sounds like he's thinking out loud, so we don't know really what he is.
Yeah, I'm actually just looking up his Wikipedia. It says that he's had separate interviews where he claimed to be a Christian in a 2017 interview, but apparently in an interview he did just this year in 2018. Actually, it was just an interview he did a couple days ago. He claimed that he wasn't. So maybe he's just confused. He's still trying to figure out what he is, but he's given two different answers to two different publications. That's a concern.
maybe he's not sure. I mean, people shift their ideas around too, and that could be something as well. Maybe he is shifting his belief system.
I'm trying to actually read one of the articles. Let's see. Yeah, he's basically an agnostic then. Like, when asked, did he believe Christ existed within the conception of the Trinity, his answer, and I'm going to read this verbatim, that's a harder question because it starts to depend on what you mean by the Trinity. The problem with a question like that is that it assumes that the questioner and the audience, it assumes that the questioner and the audience and the answer share the same conceptualization of categories. So I would say yes, but it's bounded yes because I have a particular conceptualization of what the Trinity means. So I guess maybe yes, but I mean, I still think he's mainly throwing around a word salad here.
I don't know much about his history either. I'd have to really look him up. I discovered him. How did I stumbled on him when I was reading about Jung and some other things and intelligences, and I ran into him from that stuff, not this political religious stuff.
That's how he became famous. He became famous, I think, towards the end of 2016 because he spoke out against what was it, Bill C-16 in the Canadian Parliament. It's basically, I mean, there's a lot of apparently, like, it, the whole point, the whole purpose is like to, I mean, its intention, I guess, is to protect, I guess, transgender people from like discrimination. But like, I think like the claim that he was parroting was that like it could cost him his job, like if someone like misinterpreted like what he was saying as discriminating or targeting transgender people when he wasn't. Like, that's, but I mean, I don't really know too much about the issue, so I should probably shut up about it.
I think what's hard with transgender is that so many of us identify so strongly with our gender, that the folks that don't as much, like, the ones that say that they're a whole different gender instead of man or female, or they don't pick a team, so to speak. It's frustrating because we don't know what to do with that, but because there's so many people that identify so strongly with one side or the other. I don't know, and we don't know. I mean, some of it is social roles, but there's that story about the Dominican, and you can look this up. It's a Dominican village, and the Dominican village, they had these children who were born girls, raised female, played like female, acted like female, and then about the time when puberty hits, instead of acting female, they started acting male, even though they were being treated as females. And then they found out that they had genitalia that wasn't dropped, like it was actually internalized, and that there was enough testosterone when they got older where it actually dropped down. And their behavior actually started being affected by the hormones that they had. They actually started changing behavior. And a lot of people have found that counterintuitive. So it seems like some of the ideas that gender is solely social construct doesn't seem to be correct all the time, because you're still biologically influenced.
Yeah, I would agree to that.
But when you touch that subject, it's always like
yeah, there's always
eggshells.
Oh my god, that's why I avoid it altogether.
But it's complicated because I think there are some people that slide to one side or the other when their plumbing says one thing, but their maybe their hormones are saying another.
Thinking of something, a topic. I'm trying to change topics here, but I forgot the topic I wanted to bring up.
We were talking about Peterson and the Canadians.
Oh God, that's got to bring it to Canada.
I don't know much about Canada except it looks a little bit better than here right now.
Yeah, it depends on what you're looking at. Maybe for like healthcare, perhaps. I mean, there's still a few elements of Canadian healthcare I don't like, but you know, ours kind of sucks the worst overall. They actually have I think Canada has like a worse homeless problem than we do. So, you know. And they don't have, and we have a higher median, we have higher median income. So, you know, I think that's probably another plus to have on Canada.
I somehow doubt that Canada has a worse homeless problem, only in the sense that, I mean, goodness sakes, they're freaking cold. And homeless people freeze to death in the U.S. all the time. So, like, that's why they moved to Las Vegas and San Diego.
They do a better job of building the shelters. I mean, the thing is, like, we do a pretty good job of building shelters, like, in the northeastern part of the country, but, like, not so much in a place like Seattle or, you know, really the entire states of Washington or Oregon. That's why they all get dumped down into California and some to Arizona as well. Like especially so hold on, I'm actually looking up the statistics now. Apparently, you are, in fact, yeah. So Canada does have like a higher homelessness rate than us. Apparently, wow, you are 2.5 times more likely to be homeless in Canada than you are in the U.S. But the difference also is sheltered versus unsheltered populations. Canada actually does a better job of sheltering their homeless, and that's just because, you know, let's just say they'd have a lot of PR problems if a bunch of them were freezing to death.
No, they just say that they're like natives and they live way up north, and they're like, oh well. I've heard that the way that they treat the folks that are like native Indians is actually quite poor, which kind of doesn't shock me that they would and that they get off the hook. I've also heard that same complaint about Australia as well with Aborigines.
Wouldn't surprise me.
But, you know, manifest destiny and all that.
I don't feel as guilty regarding Manifest Destiny about beating the Mexicans in the Mexican-American War. Although I probably would regret a lot of the ethnic cleansing that kind of occurred afterwards. I mean, especially with the state that you're living in, like, oh my God. Like, I think one of the things that one of the most under talked about points regarding California is how it was kind of built off of ethnic cleansing, just saying.
Are you talking about us killing Mexicans?
No, Indians. There were a lot of, after you guys took over. I mean, to be fair, both the Mexican government beforehand as well as the Spanish Empire before, because, you know, Mexico declared independence from Spain and won an independence war against Spain. They kind of did the same thing that we did to the British. The Spanish and the Mexicans after them I mean, they were killing a lot of the Indians too. We just kind of, once we took over California, we kind of just finished it off, I guess. But at least, like, I mean, because I mean, my understanding of like Indian American and I guess Native American relationships within the U.S. is a little shoddy. Because I mean, like one of the things that people probably, I mean, another thing that generally tends to get over exaggerated is how much we contributed to it. Because like in reality, like a lot of the deaths, like to the Native Americans, really were due to the spreading of disease, which they were disease that were spread by us. But I mean, the question of intentionality is also kind of as yet really to be found. Because I mean, it's not like we had. I mean, well, no, I don't think we did. I don't even know why I said that. I don't think it was. I guess you would say intentional in the fact that we didn't really know what germs were. So it's not like we were committing biological warfare. It was really just a byproduct of evolution. Because what were Europeans doing before they settled here? I mean, they were they had gone around exploring and colonizing other places. So they naturally, over generations, they had built this immunity, like to the spreading of diseases, whereas the Native Americans hadn't. So by the time the European settlers made contact with the Native Americans, we spread our diseases to them. They spread their diseases to us, but we actually have a biological resistance to it that's far more advanced than theirs. So by the time like their population had already been in big decline, but by the time that and then of course several centuries later, that's really when they decided to kill really off what was ever left, and that's kind of where we are at now.
Unfortunately, just all can't get along. Every country has lines drawn with blood. It's sad. Sad. So, you gotten any good Italian food lately?
No, not really.
I
We
know
don't
that you
really
were
have good
on that for a
Italian
little
food in
bit.
Arizona. Got a lot of great Mexican food, but Italian food, I'm gonna have to say sorry, not really.
Is your Mexican food like Tex-Mex, or is it more like our Baja over here?
No, it's more like Baja.
Yeah, that's the good stuff. I don't understand this Tex-Mex stuff.
I don't understand it either. Like what the? I don't think I've ever even had Tex-Mex before. I'm not even.
What in tarnation is this queso?
Oh God, I just typed in Tex-Mex to Google Images. I'm looking at this and I'm like, what kind of monstrosity is this? People actually eat that.
I don't know. It's like dog food or something, right? Like
I know. Freaking Texas, man.
So I noticed that like when I go live on this channel, it says playback and applications disabled by video owner. And I don't have that on my Holy Spackle channel. I tried to fix it so it didn't do that, but it's doing an MK where it's like, oh, I won't play back for you. And I hate that. And then you have to dig up the channel and figure out where it is. You know what I'm talking about? Have you seen this?
Nope. I haven't really been on Hangouts in a while because I use Discord a lot more often.
One more thing to break. That's what happened. It's just completely broken. So the way you get views really is like you do like some crazy rant about somebody that's pretty dumb, and
Trump.
and then you get a bunch of people, Arr! and then you become a normal channel after that.
Yeah, that's not well. I mean, that's pretty much how JD King built his channel off of. It's just well, I mean, it's not even really. I guess it's just one week where everybody gets to rant along to how much they hate creationists.
I think they're running out of fuel. Like it's
Yeah,
just
I've
one person.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like this is the same shit like they've been talking about like for the last 4 years. It's like at some point, like you got to get over it. You're not going to change these people. You're just not.
At some point, you just got to talk about how to make the perfect grilled cheese sandwich.
Seems like a much better use of 4 years. God, 4 years with these people. I mean, I actually stopped caring about like anything J-Man or True Empiricism had to say like 2 years ago. I just kind of realized, well, I mean, it's not like you're really going to change these people. Um, I, I noticed that it was really just the same conversations, really that had been going on for the previous 2 years beforehand. And I look at the drama like really regarding those people now, and it's like, wow, 2 years off that boat, and it's still the same shit. And I don't want to sound like arrogant because I get it. Some people, I get it. They enjoy the drama, but I have to wonder, like what's it really for at the end of the day?
It just depends. I think that there is some sort of cathartic thing about beating people in the face with your words. I think some people find some pleasure in that. And that's a thing. Some learning is a thing. Conversation is a thing. I thought at one point I'd be like above like the beating people in the face thing, but I found myself sucked into that from time to time. Like, because eventually, like, you hit these walls and you're just like, there's nothing else to do but giggle and laugh. My coworker just texted me and said she's dead. I don't think she's dead.
Well, if she texted you, she is definitely not dead.
I'm gonna tell her lies.
Oh, fuck. So did you watch the State of the Union address?
No. Was it hilarious?
Not really. It's just the sad part is like I think they did like a poll. I think like 70% of Americans actually liked it because, I mean, the speech, like there were a lot of he tried to make it as uplifting as possible. Like he even went as far like to invite literally a North Korean defector who actually lost both of his legs literally while trying to defect from North Korea. And then like the TV cameras show up on the guy, and like after he's announced, like he lifts his crutch up in the air. The crutches that are keeping him,
Oh, I thought you said crotch. I was so confused.
I say crotch, yeah. That's why I went further. I was like, I hope no one thought of it as crotch. I said crutch.
And then he lifts his crotch up in the air.
Crotch,
My God,
yeah.
that's because he slept with that porn star.
Yeah. But that's the thing. I was like, yeah. I think once I saw that, I was like, yeah, damn it. People are actually going to have a high approval rating of this, aren't they? But but if you actually look more at the speech, like it was a lot of it was just more fiscal irresponsibility. If anything, he talked about ramping up the drug war, which is always so wonderful to hear. Oh my god!
Wait, he kind of campaigned on this. Hey, people that maybe are libertarian and in between, I'm one of you. And now he's saying drug war stuff. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I guess it works with his build a wall narrative, right?
And he also wants to brag about he did talk about like a huge like infrastructure plan. Like he literally wants to spend like $1.5 trillion like for infrastructure over the next few years. I don't know, maybe it could be over a decade. I'm not entirely sure, but I mean but like the thing is like this really wouldn't have been as much of a problem if he didn't sign a tax bill that was literally going to create $1 trillion deficits. Because that's what we're gonna get like over the next 4 or 5 years. It's gonna take around 4 or 5 years till we get there, but we will most likely see $1 trillion annual deficits again.
Renee's asking if I have any life hacks for packing luggage. You can roll, and then if you have any little bags to put things in, you can roll sharps and stuff real tight. And you can get a lot of stuff if you do that because you stack them all and roll them really, really tight.
Life hacks on packing luggage. There's only two things. It's called brute force and ignorance. Those are literally the only two things I know when it comes to packing luggage.
Not that kind of rolling. Just thinking rolling a joint.
Are you talking to me?
Oh, I was reading live chat. She said, "Oh, the closed." Rolling with my homies. She's packing her life into like one suitcase. Like her entire life, just in one suitcase. I don't know why there wasn't like, I don't know, let's make it a trunk and ship some stuff over, even though it'll take 3 months. But instead, it's whole life in a suitcase. It's amazing. The only thing is, like, you can't roll your shoes. Like, shoes are actually what takes up a lot of room. Like, clothes, like, shirts are pretty easy because you just roll them up. Yeah.
Roll it today.
Yeah, Scott said the same thing. You can use Ziploc bags, the real big ones, you know, the gallon size, and you put your shirts in there and you roll them tight, really, really tight, and it'll be like a vacuum seal, sort of. Pro tip. So, did you vote for Trump by chance?
Hell no.
Who did you vote for?
I think I just wrote in like some random person. I wasn't. Hell no. I wasn't. I mean, I wasn't gonna add my name to Trump. No way.
I didn't want to vote for Hillary. I ended up voting Bernie all the way.
You just wrote him in.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh, you're in California. It's not like that really makes a difference.
No, it's not like I'm in a swing state where it really matters.
I don't know. It's looking back. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of things I generally don't like about the Democrats, but fuck. I mean, I think I'll probably just vote for them in 2020 just to get this guy out. And I really don't care how bad the Democratic nominee is, because just, you know what, fuck this bullshit at this point.
I don't know about that. Like, I don't think I want Oprah as president either.
She's not gonna run. Come on. Although I must say that would be funny though.
I mean, only if we win prizes, you know, for her after her speech.
That's going to be a fun presidency. You get a drone strike, and you get a drone strike, and you get a drone strike.
It's okay though, because she'll only drone strike in the middle of nowhere, so it's cool.
I don't know. I am a little. I mean, but then again, I mean, I don't want to say it's impossible for Oprah to win just because. I mean, if you had told me 3 years before Trump had gotten elected that Donald Trump had a shot at winning the presidency, I would have laughed. You know, I would have laughed so hard. Yeah, he proved. I remember even when he announced, I laughed because I thought it was impossible. I thought it was going to fall apart so easily. I was obviously wrong. The sad thing is, like, when you really think about it, like, for Trump to win, he needed like 10 things to go right, and they just happened to go right in his direction. Like, not only did he needed to run against a bunch of really weak GOP candidates, he needed them to be and then not only do they have to be weak, the more GOP candidates, like the more establishment GOP candidates there are, the more they divide the vote up. So that also worked to his advantage. He needed to have a very weak Democratic nominee, which he also needed, and then he just needed that Democratic nominee because he still couldn't have he probably wouldn't have beaten Hillary if it hadn't been for all of Hillary's scandals to come out at all the wrong times. Like you take like those, like I said, like you take like those, all those things into account, and that's what creates a Donald Trump presidency. If one of those things hadn't gone his way, he probably wouldn't have been in the White House at this time.
Well, I think the other thing is we're sick of the predictable candidate, the Hillary Clinton or the
And we're also sick of
Ted Cruz.
I don't think Ted Cruz was that predictable. I think we're also just sick of family dynasties. Like we're sick of, we don't want more Bushes, we don't want more Clintons, we don't want more Kennedys. Why do the party establishments keep giving these people to us? We don't like them.
So for some people, voting Trump was sort of I want to see the world burn, and
I don't think that. Maybe for some people online, but I mean, if you get off your computer like for a little bit and you talk to real people in a lot of these communities that have especially been hurting really since the U.S. has been deindustrializing over the past few decades, a lot of them are hurting. They're not catching up to the new developments, and Trump was able to easily tap into their frustrations. So when they voted for him, they felt like they were going to get a better deal. I think the vast majority of Trump voters really did it because they thought it was the best decision for the country's direction. How they came to that conclusion, I'll never know, but
I don't know. The ones that I know that voted him, I mean, they literally verbatim are pretty much spouting out Fox News constantly. So when I get off the internet, I mean, it really is just that bad.
I really wouldn't know. I don't think anybody in my family voted Trump.
Yeah, I don't know. It's there's a lot of people that are very fearful of Muslims, and they seem very fearful of just what they're observing in Europe, and I think there's a lot of reactions from that.
Well, yeah, because they seem to think that America is Europe, and it's very different in many ways. Like we're actually a lot. I mean, the main reason like Islam isn't as much of a problem like in America as it is in Europe is because we're a lot more selective about who we take in. Like when we take in immigrants from like the second and third world, we usually take in the best educated ones. I actually have some concerns about that because I'm worried that what we're doing is we're taking away the best educated people from like poor countries and making it hard for them to develop because we're basically causing a brain drain in their societies.
I don't know. I don't know about this brain drain theory because like if they're just blowing people up, I mean, you kind of have to get out of the way of the missile before you can do any changes. So I think what's upsetting to me is countries that we are sort of friendly with, like Saudi Arabia, are actually quite harmful. And we go, oh, what are we going to do with all these refugees? But like, what is Saudi Arabia doing? Not jack, nothing good.
I don't think any of the Gulf countries. Well, the Gulf countries like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Qatar, I don't think they've taken in any refugees. They have taken in Syrians, but not as refugees. They have basically as slave workers. That's like their condition, like to get into their countries. Fucking bullshit.
Qatar. And
oh my god!
What's that? Yemen and Qatar. I'm like, oh my god.
Well, Qatar is actually okay. Good. We're kind of getting into areas that I know a little bit about because I've been reading a lot about these countries. Like it's actually the thing that's funny is like a lot of these countries are they're Sunni monarchies, right? Like we usually think of the Middle East as being Sunni and Shia divided, but I think that's a very simplistic approach to it. That's kind of like that's okay. That's like the very intuitive way we look at the Middle East. But I think the more you look at it, like, and you really look at the surface, it's really not that way. I mean, it is that's the general rule of the Middle East. But there's actually a lot of factionalism between, within Shia and Sunni communities. There's Sunnis who hate one another and they'll fight and kill one another. There's Shias who hate each other and kill each other for idiosyncratic reasons. Hell, there's cases where Sunnis and Shias work together just to take down another, Sunni because it turns out some Sunni groups hate, other Sunni groups more than they hate Shias. And in the case really of, in the case of like Qatar, like they've actually been messing, like they do have like natural gas deals with Iran. Like they share a gas field like in the middle of the ocean. I think Qatar also, like, they've tried to work with like Shia opposition to the Sunni monarchy in Bahrain. It's actually a pretty crazy place, to be honest. It's the number of like divisions that actually exist like within those societies is astonishing.
So, like,
and all that really
shock me because like the numbers of the division that I see in my own religion, like it doesn't shock me that
they don't have they don't have guns and shoot each other. That's the difference.
That is the difference. However, like you got to think like there's sort of an evolution of progression that's gone on, and luckily Christianity has gone through that progression. So like there was a point where Anabaptists were getting killed by Catholics, and reformers were killing Catholics, and everybody seemed to be killing Jews. And I'm really glad that we're moving past that, because I think that that those are dark times in Christian history, and so it doesn't shock me that another religion would also find similar factions and reasons to really just hate people.
Yeah. Here's the thing that I get really frustrated with when I talk about the issue like regarding Islam. Like what I've heard, the typical response I usually hear is, well, look, Islam, is a much younger religion than Christianity, so they're going to need some time. And I always think to myself, like, what? Because Islam is what, 600 years younger than Christianity? Like the way I see it is like, really, we have to wait 600 years for this shit to go away? Like I don't like I don't think we have 600 years. You
could argue that in some ways it was more advanced at certain points. Like you had philosophy, you had architecture, like a lot of great things were happening, and then it kind of just stagnated. And you could argue that the Dark Ages and Christianity stagnated. The Middle Ages and the Dark Ages. And I would argue that it picked up again when about the time of Thomas Aquinas, and all of a sudden we were saying, yeah, there is knowledge outside of what the church declares. We can learn, things that aren't necessarily straight from the book. Sciences and philosophy and logic and rationality, and it's not dictated from Scripture itself. Like it could be, basically Christian humanism in the 15th century, I think, and it just kind of progresses forward, where it seemed like Islam went progressive and then kind of just got wrecked later on.
Yeah, and then they really fucked it up. Like I think it was in the early 20th century. So, like, do you know the story? I actually was reading a book about. I'm still reading this book because it's like 600 pages long. It's about Afghanistan, but they talk about the Wahhabi movement and like its origins, and again, I have to look it up again, but it basically, so there was this guy named. Hold on, because I'm gonna look this up as I say it.
So, so Wahhabism, I mean, it does originate in the deserts of modern day Saudi Arabia. It was founded by a guy named Muhammad ibn Ad al Wahhab. I have probably botched that pronunciation, but as with Arabic, it's not really fun to pronounce things in Arabic. And he basically his whole thing was that he basically wanted to he was very frustrated with that there were some Muslims who were worshiping shrines, because that's always been kind of that's another main division really between Sunnis and Shias. It is that Shias actually worship some of the shrines. So because he saw that as he saw that as very sacrilegious. But his movement really didn't become militarized up until around 100 years after Wahhab's death. So after World War One, the place where Wahhab was able to become very influential was in the tribes, which later formed into what we now know as the House of Saud, which runs Saudi Arabia. Now, initially, like after World War One, because after World War One, the Ottoman Empire, which ran the Middle East, fell apart, and then obviously that created a huge power vacuum. So afterward, the kingdom I'd have to look it up. I think it's the kingdom that is now today modern day Jordan. Jordan used to actually have. Jordan actually used to control like part of what used to be Saudi Arabia. They were actually defeated like militarily, like in the aftermath of World War One in the 1920s by the Wahhabis, and that is how the Wahhabis control an entire country full of oil, no less. I mean, just because like the founder dies, it doesn't mean his ideas die, and his ideas were still influential long after he died. And those ideas eventually became like the founding doctrines of a goddamn country. I'm trying to look up I forgot what the Jordanian kingdom is called. They are called. Oh, they're the Hashemite kingdom. That's what they're called. Yeah. So it was the Hashemites who used to control really what was the Saudi Arabian desert until they were defeated. You still there? And she's gone. She might be having some trouble. Well, we can always start a new one if possible. Hopefully you get back within 5 minutes.
That was stupid. I'm back.
Okay, so you hear what I said?
I got real distracted because I had gotten booted off of Wi-Fi for no good reason.
My whole point was like the reason like why Saudi Arabia like exists as it does is because like the initial founders of the Wahhabi movement, which actually were around like which actually like
were around in, I think, the early 19th century. It turns out like they didn't really control like the region politically and militarily up until 100 years later, until the aftermath of World War One, which is kind of like a thing I find sad. It's like just because like the founder of like a certain ideology dies, it doesn't mean his ideas die with him. And it turns out his ideas were still very relevant 100 years later.
I think people don't realize that ISIS is also that same strain of Islam.
Well, it's a little different. Technically, yes, but like there's still a few differences like between ISIS and Saudi Arabia. They're both Salafists and they're both Wahhabis. They're both Wahhabis, but the difference is that ISIS practices takfir, or practices takfirism. Takfir is just another way of saying excommunication in Islam. And because and generally, you know what you do in Islam with people who you consider to be sacrilegious, right? You know, you murder them, you execute them. The Saudis actually like at least openly do not believe in takfir, whereas ISIS does. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm saying now. I'm not trying to say that Saudi Arabia is good. I'm just pointing out that, well, there's a couple of little differences.
I mean, if you're talking about the differences being like, oh, we have an atheist blogger, let's beat him 25 lashes every Friday, keep him in prison for 25 years, and hope he dies in prison. Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
And if you mean by better, like they will cut your head off with a sword versus a knife, I mean, I guess, yeah.
Well, technically, like takfir, like when they usually, well, okay. Again, I don't want to make it seem like I'm being nice.
By the way, again, we were talking about Saudi Arabia, not all Islam. Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. I'm only pointing out like there's just more of the difference in like the politics that they practice openly. Like Saudi Arabia does not like openly practice takfir, but they're still fucked up in many other ways. So like I just want to make it very clear that I don't want to sound like I'm being an apologist for them. I just want to point out one little minor difference.
I mean,
and technically, I mean a lot of like ISIS, like if you look at like ISIS schools, like a lot of their textbooks that they use are from Saudi Arabia. So I mean, there's obviously a lot of similarities. You can find the parallels like between their ideologies, but simply there are parallels, but it's not exactly the same thing. That's really the only point I'm trying to make.
The only reason why Saudi Arabia is not our mortal enemy is because of money and oil. What is it? That's the only reason. Ideal-wise, they're awful.
Yeah, that might not be as much of a problem for the next couple of decades. I think the Saudis realize that because thankfully the U.S. has finally been drilling its own oil, especially they've really they've increased their own crude oil production. Really since Obama came into office, that's actually helped out quite a bit. It means we have a lot more oil to ourselves, and we don't have to really worry about foreign imports as much. So I think Saudi Arabia realizes now that its days are kind of numbered in being a major, at least being a global oil supplier to many parts of the world. In fact, a couple years ago, they actually announced an initiative called Vision 2030, in which their whole goal is to diversify their economy really past oil. They really want to build up, I think, their telecommunication industry the most. And that's actually there's no way they can do that without having more women workers. So that will require them at some point to get rid of the ridiculous, male guardianship system that they have. Because that's what Saudi Arabia does with what they do with their women, right? Like they live under full male guardianship. It doesn't matter how old they are. Just about anything a woman wants to do, they would need to have permission from a male guardian, whether it's their husband, their father, or even sometimes their son. Could you imagine? Could you imagine like needing to have permission from your own son to do something?
You gotta hide your kids. You gotta hide.
You cut out.
Because it's hide your wife, hide your kids, because they're raping everybody out there.
It's It's actually gotten a little bit better over the last couple of years. Like they actually did get rid of the restriction on women driving, which came way too, which was, I mean, I mean, the fact that women weren't even allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia until 2017 is still an embarrassment on itself. I know that's just using the whole current year argument, but holy fuck.
I'm starting to believe there's some psychos in the U.S. that would think that too. They're like, "Oh, that's a good idea."
Yeah, they don't have political power, thank God. Unlike another country.
Mr. Pluto's asking, "What is the moderate C word?" Um, I think originally people were hurling it as an insult, and I thought it was kind of funny because originally, actually, the term Christian itself was an insult as well. And I just thought it would be funny to put moderate C word. And then you can insert whatever word you want, whether it be Canadian or Californian or Catholic or whatever you want. I don't care. But I just thought it was funny because basically I was taking an insult, and I thought it would be funny to make a moderate group, because for a while there was a term where if you were moderate either in politics or religion, they would call you a moderate, not very nice word, and I thought it was kind of funny. So we made it a group. Now, granted, the moderates would be like probably me or Scott Geerton. He's team atheist moderate, and I'd be team Christian moderate. But usually, what happens is moderates get some of the fringe kind of angered, usually. But I think it's funny. Some of the British folks that are very anti-theist would throw that word around all crazy. So there's a community called Moderate C Word. If you'd like to be a part of it, you can request to join. Mainly, it's not there to argue. It's the idea that hopefully you can build bridges among conversations, and you can definitely link to hangouts that are ongoing or content that you put out. So just another alternative of the many pools of communities.
I'm looking up more on Vision 2030. That's the Saudi initiative where they again, I'm only looking up this on Wikipedia. They want to build a shit ton of luxury resorts. They actually want to increase their tourism, which is weird because I think only Muslims are allowed into Saudi Arabia unless you're like a foreign diplomat from like a non-Muslim majority country. I mean, if you're a non-Muslim to get into Saudi Arabia, like you need like either an insane amount of paperwork or you need to be a government official, and that's it. So they probably will have to open up like their they probably will have to um, they will have to open up their borders to tourism from the rest of the world probably, and that includes non-Muslim tourists. But at the same time, like who the fuck would ever want to? I mean, okay, maybe you might want to visit Saudi Arabia just to take a picture of the Grand Mosque if you're interested in that kind of thing. But other than that, like why the fuck would anybody want to be a tourist over there? Not just the fact that it's still kind of backwards, but like it's hotter than hell.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Everything is so wonky, and I was thinking, like, is it just the time that we're in? But I think every generation we have these periods of where everything in the world seems like kind of broken and uncertain.
Then again, maybe I mean I don't know. There's a lot of really nice resorts and hotels like in the Gulf. There's a lot of Western tourists in the UAE, especially in Dubai. I actually had a friend who just like visited Dubai. Really liked it.
Radical centrism. Watch out, man. It's out of control. Yeah, the radical part about centrism, most people are centrist. That is true. A lot of people that I know are socially liberal in many ways and then fiscally conservative in many ways. And then you have the centrist. And then the centrist goes, oh, gee, maybe I'm a libertarian. And then they look into libertarianism and realize that they're a bunch of like weirdos too. And they're like, nope, never mind.
Depends on the type of libertarian. I mean, like, some libertarians are like full-on anarchists. Those people are nuts. I generally try not to associate with those people. But then you got, I guess you can say more accommodating, Reason.com types, which are okay. I actually like a lot of what they put out.
British Democrat. Well, he's been out of the scene for a long time, but if I remember, my first exposure to the Libertarian Party was actually Lieberman, of all things. And now it always seems like it's less of the leftist, somebody that would be like almost like the state of Nevada on a lot of the politics. Less of that and more the Rand Paul kind of types. It's like a failed Republican Party almost. I don't know.
It's just a failed Republican Party that actually somehow finds a way to hate welfare even more than the establishment Republicans.
You gotta pull yourself up with bootstraps. Everybody puts out an enterprise. I just don't see, Fraction, if you get sick, how it's my fault that you get sick. Like, I don't think I should have to pay for your cancer. I'm just saying.
Yeah, cancer kind of runs in my family, so that's not a good. That's not a good memory to. Well, it's a bad thought going through my head right now. I'm fine.
The point isn't. I mean, I could have picked AIDS. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I get where we're going. Yeah. But then, but the thing I've never understood about that is like, okay, but like, how far would you want to go with? How far would you want to go with not paying into the federal system? It's like, oh, it's not your concern whether someone else's kid turns out dumb. So why should I have to pay towards education?
Clutch says the old joke is libertarians are just Republicans that want to smoke weed and rent hookers. Yeah, kind of. Republicans that are for the state of Nevada.
Oh, here's another one. You see, I don't think I really care if your part of the country gets invaded, so why should I really care towards defense? Well, to be fair, you can't really invade America. We're protected by 2 oceans, but still.
I mean, at this point, if somebody took the entire state of New Jersey, I wouldn't be sad.
Oh, neither would I. Oh my God, I know. I don't know. Maybe it'd be kind of funny. The Russians would never try to invade Alaska, but that would at least be pretty. It would be funny to see them try.
I like Alaska. It's got natural resources.
I know.
It's got some strategic, importance. And I don't hate Sarah Palin. I wouldn't vote for her for anything, but like just for plain hee observance, I don't mind her. I've actually talked to her, which is strange.
Here's the thing I've never, especially like towards like anarchists, and I mean like anarcho-libertarians, like per se, like how do they think like it would like what do they think would happen like if we had no government and no military? Like how do they think Alaskans would be able to protect themselves like in the case of a Russian invasion, like in that scenario? Like do they just think that like the Russians are going to sorry, the Alaskans are just going to self-organize and everything will be okay?
I mean, that's what I think. Don't the Alaskans have Wolverine?
I mean, I don't think that's enough. I mean,
Wolverine will take care of it. John Wilkerson has joined the group. Hey, John, what's going on?
Hola. How you doing?
Now there's 3. We started with 2. And we picked ourselves up a Calvinist. Are you a moderate Calvinist?
Am I a moderate Calvinist? Okay, the fact that I have to question that, probably I'm not. So, yeah.
Well, you're at least past your cage period, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not running around saying Romans 9.
So I am a lightly liberal person. I'm not too far down the spectrum on that.
No.
And what are you, Fraction? Are you centrist or right?
I guess I'm centrist on many political aspects. I mean, I don't know. It depends. There are some things.
You're not a neocon anymore, are you?
I'm not really. No, I'm a little hawkish on some areas, but not that hawkish. You'd be surprised. On some economic issues, I'm very. I don't know. Like you, I tend to like some deregulations, but at the same time, I mean, I think there's also some areas where we need to be a little bit more progressive on. Like that's like why I support at least like universal healthcare. I don't want like a carbon copy of Canada like a lot of progressives do. If I had to copy like any country's healthcare system, I'd prefer the Dutch. Just saying. Seriously, like Dutch actually have like Dutch healthcare is better than Canadian healthcare. Deal with it, people. I know I've probably triggered some Canadians with that statement, but come on, it's the truth.
I think Canada has improved it, but I think they had a real rough start, and I think England is in this period where it doesn't. It seems almost like they're at the stage that we are with baby boomers toppling over our social stuff.
Oh fuck, baby boomers! Don't get me started on those people.
Well, you know that their generation's so big, and we are,
sucks.
and we're the enormous weight of them isn't being carried, and I think they're going through something similar from what I'm observing in England, but it's with their healthcare instead of just social services.
Yeah, that's why they've cut back on healthcare services a little. Like it used to be like 8% of their GDP, now it's 7%. It's actually why like the current conservative government in the UK isn't very popular. And the thing is like the guy who's like the head of the Labour Party, which is like their left wing party, he might actually win. Like this guy is like the head of their party is like really far to the left, like practically like almost practically a Trotskyist. And here's the kicker: because the conservative government in the UK kind of sucks, he might actually win the next election. We might have like a literal Marxist like actually become like a leader like of a Western country.
Oh, that'll be a trip.
Oh my god, yeah, it will.
Well, the UK is very strange. I mean, I was looking at their political layout and just the amount of I don't know. They voted in some people that would never get voted in the States, at least right now. And so it's been kind of interesting to observe from afar and kind of see what's going on. And I don't know what to make of it, actually.
We would never vote in somebody like George Galloway. Do you know who George Galloway is?
George Galloway, I don't know. I was thinking more.
He's insane. Like he's like this really insane, like far left politician. Or he used to be like a politician. He's not like in the House of Commons anymore. That guy, like, okay, like he was. Well, he actually did a lot of weird things, but like he was always like very like yeah. He kind of he built this reputation as being like this incredibly like anti-American like politician in the UK. And he did that. That was kind of like in the direct aftermath of us invading Iraq. So you can kind of understand like why a demagogic figure like that could exist. But he basically took things like to a whole new level. Like he would go on and say things like, "Oh, like there were some terrorist attacks that happened in the UK." Like his response was, "Well, maybe we kind of deserve it because we helped invade Iraq." Like that kind of masochism. But he also did some other things too. Like I'm like,
So he's actually Scottish. Interesting.
yeah, well, he actually said something. God, like before there even was like the whole Iraq situation, he actually, again, some people might deny this, but I think there is some evidence that does point to this. He actually did. There is evidence to suggest that he collaborated with the Saddam Hussein regime and he actually got rich off of doing like secret backroom oil smuggling deals with them. Because that was how, because back then Iraq was under sanctions, so the only way to really make money was really through oil smuggling, and Saddam Hussein actually ran a lot of oil smuggling rings. This guy Galloway might have actually, I think, made money off of that because he was actually friends with Saddam Hussein.
What is with all the Brits being like pro-Palestine? It's like they feel guilty for the mess that they caused.
Well, yeah, that's probably one reason why.
Well, too late, guys. We're here, and there's now Israel. So I mean,
I think. Well, I mean, if they're gonna feel guilty about like Palestine, they better start. I think they need to feel guilty about a lot of. I don't know where that guilt is on African countries, especially places like Kenya or. God, I'm still trying to remember all the countries Britain has colonized because they've colonized a shit ton.
Well, it is a small, soggy little island that does fit inside my state. So,
Kenya.
Hey-oh.
Kenya was like one of the worst things too.
I'm just bitter because my best friend's moving to the UK.
Yeah, when the Kenyans rebelled against the British colonizers, a lot of them were actually thrown into these they were like literally thrown into these concentration camps, like full on. A lot of them were tortured. Some of them actually were castrated. One person who actually was castrated in Kenya was actually Obama's grandfather.
Dun dun dun.
Funny story. There was actually when Bush was in office, he had this bust of Winston Churchill, like in the Oval Office. Obama actually he didn't have the Churchill bust. He had one of Martin Luther King Jr. instead.
Yeah, it made headlines about that where he got rid of that.
Yeah,
I don't.
Bust. Considering that Winston Churchill was prime minister at the time when his grandfather's balls were getting cut off, I kind of understand why he got rid of it.
Well, didn't he send it back to the UK?
I think, and then it's back in the Oval Office now.
Yeah, it's back in the office because it belongs to the White House. So, yeah.
Let us not forget that Canada is our mortal enemy, and they set fire to the White House at one point.
Cananavia.
And they were also sponsoring Indian tribes to attack American settlers. So, yeah.
We're watching you, Canada.
Got our eyes on you.
Yeah, well, we actually were the ones to start. We technically were the ones who tried to invade Canada back during the War of 1812.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, some people that may have been aggression on our part, but if you ask me, that may have just been the chickens coming home to roost. Don't want to get invaded by us. Don't sponsor Indian tribes to massacre our civilians.
How dare they?
So, were you part of CA's broadcast earlier?
No. Nope.
Oh, okay.
No.
I didn't know if you did the shindig or not. Do you guys still do your cancel Google Plus? I've been working a lot, so I missed like everybody.
Yeah, we miss you too. Actually, the council
I'm hilarious.
is the council is no longer part of the Bible thumping Wingnut network anymore. We decided to break off, and because we weren't very happy with where it was going, so we decided to go ahead and just say, thank you, but we're going to leave and do our own thing. So now we are having our own separate podcast now, and we've actually dropped off the Google Plus part. Now we're just called the Council, and we have our own podcast now. We've got a couple already released, and we are just happily going along.
I was reading one of your blogs, and I'm pretty sure it was you because it was signed Atomic Blue.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think I disagreed with it.
With what? Which one?
I'm trying to remember. Hang on. What was it? It showed up
on my.
Was it just
recently
feed.
with? Really?
Yeah. When was that?
Was it the one with Jordan Peterson?
Jordan Peterson. Oh, I think I thought I commented on that and it didn't go through or something, and that's what it was.
Was this through our council blog page? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. I just wrote that about Jordan Peterson. I didn't really have any kind of argument or anything. I just kind of said, this is what's been going on. He's been making a lot of headlines, and then I kind of talked about a little bit about where he stands as far as his faith goes, because even though he doesn't really claim he's a Christian, he definitely takes on a lot of traits or a lot of lingo about the Christianity, but he doesn't want to be labeled or boxed in as a Christian or somebody who believes in God. It's really weird. It's really hard to nail him down when it comes to what his faith is exactly. But at the same time, he definitely believes something, but he doesn't really want to make it clear. So yeah, and that's all I was kind of make a point of.
He's edgy because I was talking about Peterson earlier in the beginning because he's coming up so much, and I don't care for the lobster claw interview and stuff like that. I actually think he's wrong.
Yeah, the lobster.
Well, yeah. I think she's an idiot, and I think that he's actually wrong on some things. But the thing with him is what I liked about Peterson was actually that he talks about the different kinds of intelligences and Jung and that side of psychology. That
he's very well. Yeah, he's very well informed when it comes to Carl Jung and Nietzsche and all those other past philosophical kind of people. I enjoyed listening about his knowledge on that. But yeah, when he says something about us being like lobsters, I was like, okay, it's a little far-fetched, but
it was more, I think, the fact that lobsters organize themselves like in a hierarchical structure, at least like in terms of like their social mobility. That kind of botched that. It's just more the fact that their society is really based in hierarchies, and humans are the same way. Many species are that way.
Well, yeah, but you can make an argument for a lot of other species about that. So, I mean, you can't just say, "Oh, we're like lobsters." No, we just have a way of structuring our humanness, humanity in a certain way, and animals do the same thing too. So, I mean, I just silly for him to kind of make that statement that we're like lobsters. We come from lobsters. Boil me up and dip me in garlic butter.
I have to look more at that as a statement, but I don't know. I know that atheists like to, before the lobster lady interview, which caught fire with a lot of libertarians and people that have an anti-feminist.
Kathy Newman,
that
was hilarious. So what you're saying is,
I don't see him as particularly anti-feminist. Actually, not just anti-wacko feminist.
I wouldn't say he's anti-feminist at all. In fact, yeah. I think he's made it very abundantly clear that he's not against women. He's just he just has a different way of explaining it. That's all.
Right, and he does think that men and women tend to veer towards certain interests and successes and stuff like that, and not that one is less intelligent than the other or anything like that. I don't really disagree with that. I think that is very unpopular right now in amongst academia in particular. So he's going to be hissed and booed out there. But
because he's not following the script. Because right now, lately, the script has been white men are evil. And, they all live in some kind of patriarchy, and they are the ones that are suppressing everybody. And he's going against that, saying, no, that's not the case. Women are not, suppressed or getting paid as the least. I mean, he's just kind of making an argument saying, look, I mean, there's ups and downs, and there's different there's different reasons why some women are getting paid less than men, other than the fact that they're women.
I do think that the pay gap does exist because I've observed it, I've watched it, and I think that some of that has to do with interviewers and things like that, and a lot of times people are obscuring the pay gap and saying no, it's because men do X, Y, and Z jobs, and women won't. And I don't think it's that, because you can compare the same jobs sometimes, and there is a pay gap. So some people,
it's very small though. It's like 2-3 cents, like to the dollar. And even then, like you can't even say that discrimination really accounts like for that entire 2-3 cents.
No, I have observed discrimination, and I have watched that, but and this is where I disagree with Peterson. He acts like it doesn't exist. He kind of whitewashes it completely.
I don't think he didn't. In that interview, he didn't. He said that that discrimination might account for some of it, but his whole point was that there's like 18 variables we're working with here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was my point.
And that's the whole point. Like, there's many. Yeah, we don't know to the degree like how much of an influence does one variable have, as opposed to another. But I mean, from the looks of it, I mean, like at worst, I mean, like that pay gap, accounts for such a really small, or at least like discrimination accounts like for a very small amount, of that pay gap.
But even if it was the pay gap, you don't want to just paint a broad brush and say, oh, it's the white rich man who's doing this. No, it's that particular company. If Apple is doing this kind of thing where women are getting paid less, point the finger at Apple. Don't point it as, oh, it's the the Republicans or whatever. I mean, it's ridiculous.
The next thing is, I mean, the company does it is comprised of people, right? So I mean, so when a company sets their vision across, what they want to be like, what they want to promote, I mean, you're looking at essentially a group of people. So you can kind of point out that demographic of that company and say that it is a problem. I mean, you look at a demographic like REI and the Tree Loving Hippies of Washington State and how they run their company,
yeah.
Which, by the way, is a very good company.
Mm-hmm. I heard it's a great company. Yeah, I heard it's a great company to work with.
And they're super liberal and tree hugging hippies, but like I'll tell you what, like they're a good company. You might actually. I mean, politics rarely come up there, but they are very progressive and generous as a company compared to other retailers. They kind of, I think, put Apple to shame. Apple's supposed to be a lefty company too overall, and I think REI models it much better.
Yeah. But again, though, I mean, if there is an issue with some kind of mishandling of women being paid less, obviously there's somebody within that company who's doing the hiring and setting that wage. And so if that's the case, find those people and then get rid of them.
Well, some people say that the variable might be in negotiation. So at the point of hiring, negotiation, and a part of negotiation for getting a raise. So somewhere at the part of where you're hiring, they're willing to lowball women, and they're used to women.
But a lot of that also could be the fact that men have a propensity to be more, I guess, to be more willing to negotiate harder for that raise.
Exactly. And I was going to point that out. That was what Jordan Peterson was talking about with that interview with Kathy Newman. He actually pointed that out, saying that men will actually fight for a higher wage, while women will sometimes sit back.
And it's not even and then Kathy Newman's response is, "Oh, you're saying this is what women do," or
exactly. So you're saying that women are weak. Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, I'm saying that, men, like statistically speaking, men are just more likely to do this. It's not even to say that, like, there are some, men that are outliers that are not fighters, and then you have women who are, outliers who will fight for that wage. It's not even like it's an all or nothing thing. It's just the fact that men are statistically significantly more likely to do this. It's not like it's that big of a deal. And then, and then her whole thing was about, oh, you're just saying that we should just accept this and be happy. That was the part that really just
yeah.
It was really at that point I realized, like, okay, this woman is just not being honest.
Well, she's not listening to anything what he was saying. I mean, she just had a whole script of, I'm here to make this guy look like a pig, and that's it. That was her whole MO, was I'm here to make him look like an absolute conservative pig who is a white male and privileged, and he is scum. He's a scum of the earth. I think that was it.
I think privilege is a thing, but and I understand the push for academia and stuff like that to kind of create a narrative that's frustrating in that way. But I was going to say that this is not what he's only about, and I really hate and loathe that this is what is taking root, because he is not. From what I observe, I don't think he is the libertarian fanboy that some people are raising him up to be.
Oh, he's not. He's not.
No, he probably isn't. I mean, yeah, who knows? I don't even know where his politics even lie, for the most part. I mean, I'm not Canadian, so therefore I really don't care. So, but I mean, he does have a pretty fascinating YouTube page. If you go to his YouTube page, he has a lot of interesting lectures. One that I'm starting to listen to is about the philosophical side of biblical stories, or something like that, I think. And it's kind of interesting. I wanted to get more into it, and but they're long. They're like an hour and a half long for each one, and there's like a whole series of them where there's like probably like 6 or 7 videos, and so it's a lot to go through. But yeah, I don't know where he lies exactly politically, but obviously, though, there's a lot of people don't like him, but mainly because, well, he tells the truth. But at the same time, the reason why a lot of people do like him is because he tells the truth. So,
well, the atheist community, because I've linked a couple of things about his interesting ideas with morality and God, and they kind of go to, they've been going to town on him, getting mad about him, and then.
Well, did you know he has a speaking engagement with Matt Dillahunty this July?
I did not know that.
Yeah, that should be interesting. So him and Matt Dillahunty are going to do something together, which I don't know why. I mean, Dillahunty is just going to dodge everything. He's just going to say, I don't know anything about that. Like he always does.
I just want you to know that California is a friendly state to Mexicans, so our tacos will still remain good. Just saying.
Yeah, but not to Native Americans, because you killed them all.
Unfortunately, we did kill a lot of Native Americans, but we have great tacos.
Yeah,
build the wall.
But I don't know. I think a lot of these, like, I mean, people might not like this, but I think a lot of the disparities that we generally see, like in American society, really do come down to our personal decisions. That's like, I don't know, just saying that generally tends to piss certain people off. It's kind of the same, because I mean, like, sure, maybe there might be some element of discrimination. I mean, I'm not going to deny that, but I think it's such a small and insignificant part. It's so small and insignificant to the point where, I mean, even if you're going to voraciously fight for it, you're only going to make so little progress, really, with all the time you invest into it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just telling you that the tunnel systems that they have in San Diego apparently are off the chain. We're finding like tunnels all the time, and they're just building more and more tunnels, and these have rail systems and stuff. And now they have cannons where they're launching drugs already. They're practicing, and they're launching drugs into like these random parts of like our desert areas and canyon areas. Good luck, man. Like, you can build a wall. It's not going to stop the Kitty Canyon cannon of drugs.
Yeah. It's going to be no problem at all for them to get drugs open. In fact, most of the time, it's the government themselves that are actually aiding or helping making sure the drugs come in, because that's where they're.
I would much rather take that money that we're talking about, this exorbitant, huge amount of money about building a wall that's really useless, and I'd much rather put it towards healthcare, which I think would be useful. Who's this? Who sent you? Who sent you? Who is this person?
No, I didn't send it to him.
Oh, that's Marcus.
Who's Marcus?
Marcus is also from Canada. Scandinavia.
Mm.
His little initials there are, it means what do you mean by what do you mean? Yeah. YDM WDYM is what do you mean? But it's Marcus. I vouch for him. Speak, Marcus.
Hi, Marcus. I don't mean to interrupt your conversation.
No, it's okay.
It's fine.
I was just being dramatic because,
I just wanted to say that really wouldn't do much, like, for healthcare, because I think the wall would only cost like $25 billion. I mean, that's, when you actually look at like that compared to the entire American budget, it's really not that much. Like, the main problem I have with the wall is that it's really not going to do anything to solve our major, like, the real problem with illegal immigration, and it's the fact that 40% of the people who are here on a visa extend their stay past its limits. I mean, what's a wall going to do to stop that? Conversation dead already?
Not dead. I'm alive.
Well, you hear what I said, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
1 second, I have to mute real quick. Goodness sakes, don't make me carry the emotional burden of this conversation. I'm just a girl.
Marcus, we're talking about various things, but most right now we're on the topic of immigration. Which, by the way, I just stuck a piece of paper on the or an image on the Hangout chat of of a plan that's going to happen by 2020, signed by Maxine Waters, your famous, well-known politician over in California, and she's going to allow how much people there are going to be over 40,000 Somali Muslims into the into California by the year 2020. That's going to go well.
Oh, good. Yeah, we have a. I wouldn't say it's well. I would say it's a growing problem. It's a well-known problem here, at least in Toronto, Canada. That we have a lot of. We have also a great number of Somali immigrants here, and they do a horrible job of assimilating. Like there are whole known neighborhoods where they have migrated, where they have settled in large numbers, and where they have settled is where crime has skyrocketed, or at least grown in a large number and proportion. Where they even amongst themselves, it's like they have factions amongst themselves, and they, unlike some other groups that will come here, like Italians or Caribbean people, they bring their turf war here, and it results in, you have whole neighborhoods that were for low income people, and they've come and take that over to the point where the city has taken down that housing and migrated people outside of the city for the reason of they get them closer to law enforcement and police patrols, so they don't get into much trouble out in the city, because it makes the city bad. Like we had a shooting in one of our main malls that has never seen like a shooting, man. I'm telling you, this is a very well populated mall in the downtown core. And we had a shooting down there where it was just like a gang war. Some people saw some other people that they really don't like, and they started shooting in a crowded food court. And you have a person who died who was not even involved in the whole thing. And the fact that that could happen in our city, it's not to say like, oh, all Somalians are like that, but they've been known to, they don't come from a very comfortable lifestyle, and they come here where things are mostly in their laps. They can get guns a lot easier than they could before. They don't have to rob people to get the things that they want, and drugs and stuff. And they get to a point where they're just uncontrollable. You're out in the street, and you can't look a certain way at someone, or don't say hi to that person because they're Somalian, because it's a well-known precaution to just keep to yourself and let them keep to themselves.
Right. There's never going to be integration between the two societies.
Right.
Well, plus also, the Somalia, I mean, what kind of lifestyle, what kind of, society is it over there? And it's mostly, tribal, and it's very, not exactly known for their laws or
pirates,
or
bitches.
Good, huh? Pirates. That's right. They're really good at pirates. Yeah, pirating. Yeah, piracy. But yeah, it's like it's such a terrible place, and then it's rather silly for a nation to say, yeah, we're going to grab a few thousand of these people and stick them into a neighborhood here in, whether it be Canada or America, and we'll just kind of give them a break and give them opportunities, when really they're just going to keep continuing on with whatever lifestyle and whatever societal, habits that they have, right into into a new country, and it's just going to get worse. I mean, And not only that, I mean, like the one for California, this is also supported by CAIR, CAIR, which is the Islamic
Islamic relations.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And so they're letting in 41,000 Muslims into California, into a certain small area, and that's going to go well. That's not going to go smoothly at all. I'm sorry. It's going to cause a lot of issues. I guarantee by the year 2020, when this happens, there's going to be a lot of violence that's going to be skyrocketing over there in the Los Angeles area. Not that it already has already.
Because there's Muslims? Is that what you're saying?
Sure. Yeah, there could be just a ton of Muslims in there that are going to be.
I mean, I live in a very. Well, for 8 years, I lived in one of the largest populations of Muslims in the U.S., which is right. It's like the eastern part of San Diego, and they actually surpassed whatever that town is in not Wisconsin, not Minnesota. What's the other one that's cold that we want to give to Canada?
That's Michigan over there in Lansing, Michigan,
so Michigan's been known for it, right? But
they got
the subsidy of Al Cajon has actually surpassed that, right? So I got to tell you, violence actually went down when more Islamic people started coming into the neighborhood I was in. Before, like when we first were married, because it was a cheap area to live in, right? And we got married at 21. We didn't have a lot of money, so we moved out east, and at that point it was more like white trash and meth heady and druggies, you know. And this one guy threw his girlfriend off of a balcony, and someone else threw a TV through the window, and there were drug deals going on across the street, and then somebody stabbed their roommate in the middle of the courtyard. It was crazy stuff going on. And then as more Muslims came in, it was actually totally different. It actually calmed down a lot. So I don't know if I agree with that. They do have they have a cultural difference, like for bartering, and they have this whole it takes a village to raise a kid thing where they let their kids run around, and everybody's parenting their kids. Like nobody's like, people are like, no, you know, they're yelling at each other's kids, which we don't usually do in California white culture. We go, oh, you know, don't talk to my little Johnny that way, you know. And so it was different, but definitely not more violent. It was less violent.
Okay. Basically, my point
for
though.
The kids. Wait, my husband has something to say. What was it?
Except for the kids that were running around and saying, shoot the hostage, pointing their toy guns at us.
That did happen. There were some kids that said, shoot the hostage. And I said, if I were you, I wouldn't be yelling that.
Right. I'm not too certain. I haven't had much reaction or observation of the Islamic ideology that they draw in, but I typically find that they put a big a weight or burden on the local economy wherever they settle, because what they do a lot of the time is that though there are programs for them to get out of those settled areas where they have come as refugees with nothing, and they're just poured into with resources from taxpayers and welfare and government funding, and they're getting all these grants free or very cheap dwelling that would normally cost like upwards of $2,000 a month. And so you have them settle in these places, and usually what they do is they'll come out, and though they're getting money from the government, they like to work, and they'll work for cash, like doing jobs in warehouses and jobs that people would need here, but a lot of employers or agencies, placement agencies, will give them work and pay them cash. And so they are, you know, undocumented, earning income, and they're getting like double income from the government. They end up buying vehicles and having kids and having more kids and still working cash. Some of them get all the way up to 40 years old. They came here when they were 20 something, and they've not gone to school. They've not bettered themselves. All they've done is made money to live the way they want to have the kids they want to live, have, and their kids grow up. Some of them usually go to post-secondary, like second or third generation. But the first generation, they don't really have to work to be here, but they, instead of take the money that they're getting from the government coming here as permanent residents at that time, well, at least in Canada, that's what they have. They can go to school. They can, you know, get a great job and get a house, and the government would often compensate them to get a house. But they usually, especially of the Somali community, because where I live, in the northwest side of Toronto, there are predominantly that's a second class. It's I mean, the second group of people, the demographic is Caribbean, Caribbean Black, and then East Indian or East African, and Somalians, Ethiopians, and even North Africans. And they'll just stay here and settle and just be there for 50 years, and they not to better themselves.
Well, I mean, I don't know what you mean better himself. I mean, most people that are quote unquote voters, like when the Irish first came to the U.S., they took jobs that were not the favorite jobs, and there was even discrimination where there were like signs saying no Irish allowed and stuff. And then when they took jobs that were firemen or policemen, at that time those were considered lowly, unwanted jobs, or they would take laboring jobs. And it seems like that's pretty common across the board in the U.S., at least in history, for anybody who's the newest off the boat, oftentimes. So I don't know if I would look down upon somebody that has given up everything to start a new life for their family if they're taking the lowest of the job. I don't see how that is an issue, especially since I know so many people here in the U.S. that refuse to work those jobs. So, and I also don't know. Somali's a little bit different. You're Canadian, so your experience might be different than mine. The Somalians here are almost always taxi drivers. It's really interesting. Like they all kind of network together, and we have a lot of taxi drivers that are Somalian, like big time. And then Middle Easterners, they've been networking together, and they own a lot of the food marts and the tire companies and things like that. So there's a lot of networking and stuff between these communities. So I don't see them as actually day laborers or people that are getting money on the sly. They actually are building businesses. So I don't know why it would be different here than Canada.
To be honest, I'm not certain of the political side of it, which would possibly make it different from there in California or in America. But that is that which I've learned from people of that community, and from having those people in my post-secondary institutions and knowing what their parents are up to, and even what they're up to, not really motivated of their parents or of themselves to. What I mean by better themselves is to soak up the benefits that they have from the funding that they're receiving from the government, and in a 10-year span or 15-year, to go out and to have a dwelling that is not government funded, so they get off the there's usually, though they have been refugees and come from a place violence stricken and often coming from civil war torn countries, I understand, and there are programs that they have to actualize them and make them and help them to better assimilate here. But there's no real they have everything. It's almost like they come here and they assume the status of a Canadian citizen, but then they, like many Canadian citizens, they just kind of sit and sink in their chairs and just, they don't really have to do much to get what they need, and they can get that for a very long time, with no real like actual need on their part. And I know people, and I know that it's common that people will take advantage of funding that they're receiving, that they don't have to do much more than to just claim, they can claim everything, medical, housing. They can get a bigger apartment if they have like 3 more kids in the next 4 or 5 years. And they'll often stay in the system because they'll keep their families living with them, and they're getting, they're just soaking it up when they can move on. Like there are some that end up being taxi drivers. There are some who like open a pizza joint or things like that. But a grand majority of them just they work the jobs that nobody wants to work, which is not a bad thing. But they're not stuck there. There's not much prejudice here. A lot of government initiatives have made employers unable to hold a prejudice to hiring a Canadian-born employee rather than a Somalian. They have a certain quota that they have to meet at each and every job sector and employment and company places that are employing people, so that they have not necessarily an equal number of demographic in their workplace, but that they are not holding bias on whom they hire when there's another person who's coming in with the same experience. They're not just holding a whole workforce. You see a strong diversity in workforce, so that there's no real hindrance to them here, and they're passing a lot of legislature here that makes it difficult for anyone to discriminate. Especially,
I think I'm more interested in what happens with the second and third generation too than the first. I think it's hard to put a lot of pressure on first generation when they're just learning the whole culture, and so I'm more interested in what happens with second and third.
And that would be interesting as well. It typically tends to be the second or third generation that does get up on their feet, but a lot of the time it would be most important actually to know those stats, because it's not well known. Some families that after the third and fourth generation, they send their kids back home because they're causing too much trouble with the other kids in the neighborhood, other Somalians or other people who are residents here, getting caught into guns and crime, and they're 3-4 generations into that, or they're just working cash all the time. So that makes it harder for them to remain on government funding, because they're not claiming things that they're doing or income that they're reporting as if they're trying to better themselves, even as the government will push them to. So that, I think that's important to lay out in a report, where you're letting your constituents know that, or people in your municipality where you're running, that, hey, this is what we're doing, to provide like some sort of report or document that shows this is the promise, or this is something we're looking forward to, the help that this will bring to us. Not that we're just extending our hand to these people that we know that it's not going to be a great hindrance upon us, as to where it would have been better to welcome these people somewhere else than to here, for their own and our well-being, those who are settled and those who will settle.
So how many generations in are you in Canada?
Sorry?
Sorry, my mute button. I was saying, how many generations in are you in Canada? Because I'm third generation U.S. citizen.
Yeah, I'm second generation in Canada. Though actually, I would even say third because my grandparents were here. I would say third generation here, from the Caribbean came.
If you hear panting, that's my dog.
Oh, okay.
He's got a Kylo Ren head. Right, it's just the head of Kylo Ren. And there's like a ball inside of it, and then it's the rubber helmet of Kylo Ren, and he just sits there and drools on it and goes so he's really loud.
Sometimes you just want to chew on Kylo.
Yeah, but yeah, my goodness, sorry. Yeah, but so my parents or my grandparents didn't come here as refugees. Simply, they came as immigrants. As far as I know, they came from pretty healthy environments. Jamaica, not so much because the dollar was, had some problems in the last, I don't know if it's half century, but I know a lot of Jamaicans tend to come here because even up to now, there's a big problem with their economy. So like jobs, you're working just less than minimum wage practically just to work. Not that you can work for a living unless you really have like an essential service sort of job, and even those are highly contested, like firemen or policemen or paramedic. It's really, you have to get into like health sector, like not just a nurse but a doctor, or some sort of construction trade. That is, you already have your license, not that you're doing your apprenticeship. But so, my parents came here, my grandparents came here, and they settled, and they, went to England outside of the country to get, certain education and come back here. Even then, it was tough for them. My grandfather opened some sort of automobile business where he was fixing engines and windshields. Then my grandmother came in, was a nurse in a nursing home, and she did that till she retired. Same with my grandfather. So then you have my mother, who, though she was born here and she didn't really know what to do, but she went out. She did post-secondary in outside of the province. She came back, and it's tough to find work, but she worked. And my dad, 25 years, worked in IT at a retirement savings company, Manulife Financial, and John Hancock. So now it wasn't difficult. My mother wasn't an immigrant here, but my dad was, and it wasn't tough because my dad had his education pretty much set up. My mom was fine. She worked. She could work with my dad, getting most of the income for the household because it was pretty good income. But being third generation immigrant here, it's almost like that's kind of the norm. There's a lot of people who are maybe fourth or fifth generation Canadian, but most of the non-Caucasian demographic is like from first to fourth generation landed immigrants. So it's not too hard. We make up practically what Canada is, or what Toronto is, in its diversity. There's a lot of good schools, a lot of good programs.
Are you glad that you're in Canada as opposed to the U.S.?
I don't know that I prefer it. I'm just kind of becoming more familiar with the politics side of it, such that I might be able to tell whether certain essential services are offered better in the U.S. than here at the funding that's provided for them. I'd say I'm comfortable here. I don't have any feeling to leave. I think, or yeah, I'm not.
Have you ever broken your arm and thought and dread whether or not you should go into the hospital or not?
No. If you're a citizen here, once you become a citizen, you get all the health care benefits.
Would you like to know that feeling? Because I know that feeling.
I don't know that feeling really. I know of people who have come here who have just been on workers permit. They, get really sick, and then they go to the hospital and they figure out through some less expensive tests that they have like a brain tumor, like my friend. It's benign, but they want to get it removed and they can't because it'll cost them so much for the surgery. They go home to a country like Jamaica that doesn't have a great healthcare system, and they're just like, well, I should have done it here, but to do it here in Canada, it would cost what, 10,000 or whatever to do it because they have no funding at all. But for me, like, I hurt my knee. It's pretty bad. I could go to the hospital, no problem. Covered. Everything's covered practically, even if I have to do a surgery to fix it. But it's just the time that it takes to get those services or to get those appointments with and medical attention that is frustrating for a lot of people. It took me something like 3 or 4 months to have an MRI, and it was booked from a week after I got the referral, but it was for like 3 months down the road. And so that caused me to be off work and to have to get compensation. And, that causes like adverse, like even depression because you're not getting compensation right away because the medical attention.
3 months out of work to do the MRI, like, what was the issue? Because a lot of times when you're doing like an MRI, it's something like real important, like a brain, injury or something like that.
Yeah, well, so we did that. They declined doing an X-ray when I asked for one at the hospital for the initial injury, but they tried an ultrasound. They didn't see anything, and even though the MRI was recommended, it was not recommended to me immediately until I sort of got the report. I remember her reading me the report and seeing that it said the MRI would be preferable. The fact that she said my doctor said there wasn't really a need for it. I brought her up on it, and she's like, and everyone else told me, yeah, you should probably do that because when they can't find it on the ultrasound and they haven't done an X-ray, they have nothing to go off. The ultrasound's not conclusive in its findings. So it seems that that's the next step. If they had done the X-ray, they probably would not have done the ultrasound unless it was something else. But the MRI is like the next step. I don't know why they do it like that. I don't
what was the injury again? Was it soft tissue or bone?
They're not sure. They think it could be meniscus. It's just that none of the therapy that they know to give is working, and only by vague like stretching or checking the flexibility of my knee can they sort of ballpark what the injury might be. But it was basically a blunt force trauma injury, so they, it could be, it's most likely cartilage, like meniscus, but they don't know. Do the MRI, you get the results. Depending on how severe it is, I'll go see a specialist and maybe surgery. But there's no conclusive test as of yet. And I was talking to some of the guys and some of my friends in the U.S. of John's crowd, on the council, and we were, they were saying you could get the MRI. If you have to get the MRI, you could get it the next week or the next day, if you live in the U.S. But I guess based on the availability of healthcare or certain equipment, they have a higher waiting list, and it's such a fewer number of that, lower availability of that equipment here. So you're waiting a lot longer.
Yeah, so the reason why they're not wasting an X-ray is because they do think it's a soft tissue thing, and it's not going to show up in an X-ray, so they have to do an MRI. Yeah, so okay, so and then they'll triage it, right? So they have a list of people with pressing needs. Is this guy going to have a brain injury and we have to get him in right away versus a knee that's been bothering you for the last few months? And so it makes sense that you'd have to wait. You know what, though? People wait here too, even with privatized healthcare, because they can't afford the bills. I knew somebody that waited to see a doctor when she knew something was seriously wrong, and she ended up dying of cancer because she waited so long.
Mm.
So I don't know. It's a weird trade-off. I know that some people I have relatives that live in the UK. They were talking about the health care there, and there's also a long waiting list too. So it's like they were mentioning the same thing. Like, I can't be out of work for an injury that isn't like life-threatening. So like you're injured, and say you pull your shoulder out of socket, you can't work during that, so you're incapacitated for work. But at the same time, you don't need to be incapacitated for work for an X amount of time. And so what they were talking about is that there's a lot of people that buy private insurance to get through those kind of injuries and just eat the cost. And then for the important stuff, they're using the other insurance. So I don't know. It's weird. All I know is it's so expensive here. You break your arm and it's a good, at minimum $8K, and maximum could be, depending on if it requires surgeries, it's like good $30K, depending on, just for a broken arm or wrist.
Wow. Yeah. I only know the same sort of cost for my dad doing what do you call it? Hip replacement and resurfacing surgeries. This resurfacing was like, that was covered by his workplace, but the replacement was out of his pocket with his workplace insurance, but he still had to pay out some of pocket. But it's $10,000 for each replacement. He had both done, and like, it's can be pretty costly, especially if you think about, like it was more extracurricular for him to get the replacement, but also at his workplace, because he's the safety rep at work. He's the guy they call before when there's a workplace injury to administer first aid until emergency crews show up. So, he could be, running up and down stairs to get to someone who has a nosebleed or had a fall or isn't breathing, and within the couple floors above and below his working floor in an office, he might have to take the stairs. And, if he can't because his hip isn't working, then they have to make a certain transition, and it just, he had certain other responsibilities, even like taught karate and stuff, like other things that he had big responsibilities to do. And, to not get the replacement, it would mean like, instead, you have the rest of your life, and he's young, like early 40s, and he would have to go throughout the rest of his life on crutches, most likely, because of the severe deterioration from an accident that was caused, that, he's just out, gets hit by a car, So to know none of his own, to to his own detriment for something that it wasn't by abuse that he came about that injury. I don't know, for it to cost that much to get something that not necessarily life-saving, but I'd say it's crucial for, someone of his age even.
Yeah, and quality of life and basically your willingness to make your ability to make a livelihood and stuff. Yeah, it all matters. My husband was working and he almost sawed off his thumb, and it was just like hanging, and the disability of losing your thumb, it took they had to do surgery. They had to get a hand surgeon who also did plastics to fix it. And he had gone through and cut through his tendon and then into his bone. And then what would happen is if he could move, the tendons are like a rubber band, he could move his thumb down and tug the thumb down, and then he couldn't bring it back up. It just would hang there. And they did an amazing job of fixing him. But it took a long time. It took a lot of physical therapy and surgery, and an injury like that, if it's not taken care of right, it would cripple your hand.
Yes, of course, yeah.
And if you cripple your hands, like, there's certain jobs where that puts you out of work. So it is certain things that do matter like that. It's just a finger, but it's an important finger,
Yeah. Yeah, especially a finger, right? Like, there's little that you can do. With having a hip or knee injury, you could have a job where you're sitting, or maybe you're like a swimming instructor or something. But because of the low stress on the joint. But if a finger is out, then it's like, simple things like, oh, perhaps I have to carry something in an office from one place to another, and I have to go through a couple doors. I have to, maybe I have to carry with my hand. I can't carry it on my arm. You got one hand occupied. You have to open the door with the other. Anything, key card entry, all of that stuff. The quality of life is very important, and that's what that's like their whole mantra for like bringing people into the country. You have a healthcare system like this, it's not really improving. Puts a further strain on, people are gonna be like, oh well, why did they bring them here? Like, we don't have like any superior funding for healthcare or anything here, and now we have. Sure, it's great to have these people here, but were we the best place to accommodate these? I don't think there's a lot of actual research done into the effect of welcoming refugees, as much as it is like kind of accepting certain initiatives of perhaps CARE, like in this situation, CARE or other Islamic relation groups or advocacy for Islamic freedom, who are just like, oh, it would be better than being there, and maybe like, they'll live peaceably here and it won't be too much of a burden on law enforcement and healthcare. But that's typically not the case, and it just comes back up to, I think on your case, at least here it is federal government, where it's then like, we have a government that's in debt. Are we actually trying to pay the debt? Are we doing tax cuts? If we do tax cuts, where's the funding for essential services and healthcare coming from? Meanwhile, we're bailing out businesses that may not need to be bailed out, and perhaps would do well to go away. It starts to make one question the I would say reigning or ruling party, really, like, that's bringing legislature and contesting legislature that might be needed for, you know, initiatives like this, if it's even feasible or you know, to carry out. Bringing refugees in is important, I think, you know, but if it doesn't help you, or if it's a great burden to you and those whom you have vowed to, you know, make life you know, possible, or them able to lead a life with a family and such, and to, you know, save up for a future, and to make them have to maybe work further into their retirements, and then, you know, you have undue stress on the community, and you know, housing prices go up, you know, everything gets kind of like a lot harder than it needs to be, you know. And if you don't have like a release for a lot of that stress, usually you end up with like a collapse where everyone just drops to like a certain income class, and it becomes hard to support even those people, because there's less taxes coming out of them to fund other services, and you make cuts on things like education and childcare, like they do here in Toronto.
What we do in the States is we give tax cuts to the rich, and then we burden the middle class. It's pretty awesome. You should try that.
Yeah, picture that. My goodness.
Well, I do work early in the morning, so I did have a window of time, but I've been going for about close to 3 hours, or a couple hours on this, so I'm going to actually have to fold it tonight, but you're welcome to stay in and chat if you'd like.
Nah, we got Discord.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a Discord too. It's a lot lighter for the off airs and stuff. I just wanted to start doing some on-air opportunities here and there, because there's not very many choices, especially ones that aren't like supercharged on theology only, or I don't know, just there's some that are kind of limited in scope and what you can do. So anyway, thanks for joining, and the opinions voiced on this is not necessarily mine, but we can nevertheless have civil conversation, and I hope you guys have a good weekend. Okay, so let me get out of here.
Yeah.
Stop podcast.